Hi, y'all. I wanted to jump on and do a review of the book Caught Up. I have seen various reactions to this book from those that have really loved it to those that have really hated it. And now, having finished the book, I think can safely say I fall somewhere in the dislike. It's not a book that I think I'd ever find myself picking up again to reread. But I definitely say it's worth it, especially if you enjoyed Lights Out, because we see some crossover characters, not a whole lot, but definitely some crossover that makes reading this book worthwhile. For me, what makes a really good book are the characters. It's their strong, layered depth that make a story stick. I want to feel like I'm a part of their world. I want to feel like I'm living their highs, their lows. I need that emotional turmoil and that emotional happiness that brings together a story. And I don't feel like that was a success in Caught Up. There wasn't much growth or depth to the female main character, Lauren. I felt like her character and her friends were just insufferable. After reading them, I felt exhausted. I couldn't tolerate reading anymore. And I think that's where a lot of times I found myself placing the book down to come back to later on, because her storyline with her friends didn't compel me to read any further. What I found interesting enough, though, is when Lauren interacted with other people like Junior, the male main character, or some of his relatives. That's when I felt like she really shined. Her character started to have multi layers, but then it's like you strip her out of those scenes and put her back with her friends, and she goes back to being a flat character and someone that I just wasn't interested in reading about. Now, Junior, though, he is what kept me reading the book. His storyline had stake, he felt real. Watching how he dealt with his struggles really added to the overall storyline. You just felt invested when you read his point of view, when you were reading about his story. He had the true heart and the grit and the actual development. And I felt like Lauren's character was solely there to orbit around Junior's. It's without her, you could have replaced her with anyone and Junior's story would have still been compelling. But I honestly truly felt like she was just there to exist for his storyline. A surprising highlight of the book, though, like I said earlier, was that you get some crossover characters from Lights Out, from Josh and Allie. They're not in there a whole lot, but when they are, they make the story fun. You get some of that same feeling that you got from Lights Out, which really helps kind of balance out the sluggish pace that I found myself having in Caught Up. Uh, Another good element of bringing in Josh and Allie was you got to see and experience Josh and his relationship with the Junior, which I found fantastic because Josh's character compared to Junior's is vastly different. And to see how the two of them have somewhat become friends, being very different, is rather funny and humorous. Now, I know, some people have said on some reactions that people don't like this book because they're comparing it to Lights Out. I personally can say I did not compare it to Lights Out at all. I let it stand on its own. I went into it thinking it was going to be a vastly different book, but it just fell short on so many different aspects. The one aspect it didn't fall short, though, is the spice. I was curious to see how spicy it was going to be since reading Lights Out, and I can say it is definitely spicy. The author wasn't shy to bring that spice. It is in there differently than it was in Lights Out, but it's still very spicy. And at times you're like, whoa, okay, this is a moment. So definitely give it worth a shot, especially if you're a fan of Lights Out. I think anyone that is a fan of Lights Out, you just have to read this book. And hopefully your experience will be very different than mine. Hopefully, for you, you find yourself easily invested into both of the characters and you have, no trouble getting through it. But unfortunately for me, this one was a miss. I will forever, though, like Junior as a character. I just can't see myself circling back around to reread this book. So happy reading. See you next time.